Hey everybody, welcome back to Lettermen Row. This is Rapid Reaction brought to you by Byers Auto. I am Austin Ward, joined as always by Jeremy Birmingham and Spencer Holbrook. And Ohio State has a complete coaching staff, yet again, a full-time coaching staff following the retirement of Greg Madison. And as we've talked about, the leading option for the last week and a half or so has been to promote Parker Fleming from within. Second year in a row that Ryan Day has done that with a quality control graduate assistant type, somebody who's paid their dues. Parker Fleming has done that twice. First hired in 2012 by Urban Meyer, spent 2 years, part of that incredible run to start Urban Meyer's tenure with the Buckeyes. Left to go to James Madison and Texas State with Everett Withers for a couple years, then returned to Ohio State, paid his dues with Ryan Day, and now he's been rewarded. He will be the special teams coordinator, as Ohio State confirmed on Wednesday morning, and that will also give a little bit more responsibility to Matt Barnes in the secondary. But, you know, Berm, for anybody who thought that this, we talked about it, the possibility this would happen, it's now happening. There was not any real interest, it seemed like, from Ryan Day to go pursue outside the program or make a real splashy hire here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know necessarily why that is. I understand people's response to this may be that it's a little underwhelming. But again, it does pretty much stay in line with what the Buckeyes have done these last couple of years. Even the Ryan Day hire was, it was about promoting continuity in the program, and where people will certainly be questioning whether or not Ohio State is doing enough to keep up with the hires at Alabama and places like that, and even Michigan and the way that they hired this offseason. People are going to, look at that and compare and contrast. But again, as we said last Friday when we really started breaking this down, it seemed like this was Ryan Day's intention from the start. I think he's probably earned a little bit of, leeway in these decisions. Things have gone pretty well in his 2 years as head coach. So where, again, it might feel like, who knows, maybe could have been better. It's not really our place to say that yet. It certainly seems like Ohio State is a place that would have drawn a lot of interest from a number of candidates, though.
Yeah, possibility still when you reference Alabama that Ohio State could add, a veteran analyst. Maybe they could help in the secondary. We're going to get more clarity on what exactly Ryan Day wants from the structure of that defensive coaching staff in the days and hours ahead here, as he talks about it and gets rolling for 2021. But the first thing he had to do was decide, what person he wanted in that full-time role, Spencer. And, this might not have been a guy that if you made a list of 20 or 30 names that he would have come up, because generally those all start outside the program. That's the way that college football works. You hire them up, snatch them up from other levels. But as we've talked about, Ryan Day seems to want to develop coaches and keep them as long as he can.
I think also the one thing about this hire is it says just as much about Matt Barnes as it does about Parker Fleming coming in and working hard. I think it says a lot about Matt Barnes that he's been able to establish himself in the program and now move up to maybe an elevated role in the defense and not just as a special teams coach and the backseat guy for the defense. I think this says a lot about the way he's been able to interact with players, with coaches, his recruiting style. I know Berm talks about how good of a recruiter he is, so to have him in an elevated role works. And then Parker Fleming obviously has shown something to Ryan Day that makes him trust him the way Corey Dennis, earned his trust a year ago. I think that this says a lot about the defensive coaching staff as a whole. They still trust Kerry Combs to get the job done next year. I think they trust Matt Barnes enough to elevate him. And now obviously there's a level of trust with Parker Fleming.
Well, that's kind of the hard part of this whole thing, I think, for everyone watching it and trying to figure out who this guy is, because the last year when we would normally have a lot more interactivity with the program and get to see more stuff on the field and get to see more behind the scenes stuff, we haven't gotten a chance to see. So it sort of comes out of left field when you talk about a guy that is going from a quality control role. I mean, Corey Dennis, we knew about. He'd been with the program for 5 years. He was, obviously Urban Meyer's, son-in-law. And so there was at least some name brand recognition there. And I think that's probably what makes people kind of go, we don't know anything about this guy. I mean, even us, when we started talking about this a week ago, I was like, okay, who the heck is Parker Fleming? And now you just, again, I think it's about you either trust Ryan Day's opinion here or you don't.
Yeah, for somebody who's been in the program twice, and especially because of the last year, I've only, briefly met him and had maybe one or two short conversations. He's a heck of a nice guy, but so I asked around with from other people in the Woody, sort of the vibe on this, and even some people that are not sticking around in Columbus very much longer. If that gives you a hint of who might have signed off on this, they said that this was the right choice, that Parker Fleming had earned that role. That was a 2 thumbs up hire from the people that I talked to. And I don't know, Berm, we talked about this the other day. It's National Signing Day. Some of the guys who've got to play or helped with being an assistant to an assistant, the way that they could get into DMs and text messages. I don't know if Parker Fleming's name had come up a lot with recruits or who he would have been responsible for, because he'd been working with special teams. So I don't know that he's done that much with Ohio State, but he was a full-time coach at Texas State. James Madison, that's not the exact same level of recruiting, but he's been in the college game for a long time, and he's going to know what his responsibility is going to be now that he's elevated to a full-time role.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of Ohio State staff right now, is that you do have a handful of home run hitters as recruiters. And so you maybe don't need someone that comes in and is a big brand name guy. Maybe you need someone that's, again, I don't like to use the term program players, because you have to have those types of dudes on your roster to keep things moving and to keep continuity. But it's sort of that same feel to me. It's not something that people are going to look at and go, oh, wow, that's a great hire, because people just don't know anything about him. And I think that the natural inclination is to question why the Buckeyes, one of the biggest names in sports, don't go out and find big name coaches. But until a year from now or 2 years from now, it's hard to really give a proper assessment. But I just think that people will certainly have doubts about what why this feels. I don't know. Is lazy the right word? I don't know. Does it feel lazy? Does it feel like it could have been a splashier thing? And again, and you only look at other schools around the country and who they're hiring, and then you wonder, like, Ohio State could hire pretty much anyone. So there has to be a reason that Ryan Day really likes Parker Fleming.
Yeah, I mean, anybody can assign whatever descriptor they want to it, Berm. It doesn't, to me, come across as lazy. I think what many may have expected or wanted was something that came across as more aggressive. And that's generally what you do when you go look outside, or if you throw $1 million around. And, Ryan Day clearly didn't feel like he had to do that. He felt the same way when Mike Yurcich left a year ago. Other than the fact that Corey Dennis had some name recognition and, direct ties to the Meyer family, you could have made the same assessment of that a year ago. But he's done this.
A lot of people did, certainly, and that's what I think.
Well, and I was going to say that came up in the press conference. Even though Corey Dennis had that advantage in some name recognition, the press conference on that announcement was, what are you doing? Like, why did he deserve to do this? And that will probably happen again for Parker Fleming, shortly when Ryan Day talks about that. But it's not like he's hurt for an explanation for why he did that, either a year ago or from sort of what we've heard in the last week about him now.
Yeah. And I think what Ryan Day is telling everybody is, if he sees something he likes in a coach, he's not gonna care what everybody else has to say about it. He's just gonna do what he thinks is best for the program, what's best for the coaching staff. And if he thinks Parker Fleming can coach special teams as well as anybody in the country, or as well as Ohio State needs him to, that's what he's going to do. And if he thinks Matt Barnes is ready for an elevated role in the defensive secondary coaching, he's going to do it. And so I think that it's just one of those things where he's just going to have to look at everybody and say, hey, trust me, this is what's going on. And this is how I want my program set up.
Yeah, Austin, you and I talked about it in Miami, after the national championship game, that these next couple of weeks, this next few months leading into spring, we're really going to be the time for Ryan Day to put the stamp that it's his program. And this sort of hire is that. It's a little different than Corey Dennis being elevated because Justin Fields was in that room at quarterback, and Ryan Day works very, very closely with quarterback. You're replacing a punter, you're replacing a kicker, you're replacing all of your stuff. I mean, I don't know how much a coach really has to do with that. When you're talking about specialists, it's not like Parker Fleming is a kicker or a punter. So what is his role? I mean, I think that this may be one of those things where it kind of gets overblown because he's the 10th coach and he's a special teams coordinator. So what is he really doing? Is he drawing up onside kicks? I mean, who knows? We don't. It's not like he's teaching the art of kicking, because that's a specialized skill. So I don't think you're going to see the, wow, this was a terrible hire 10 months from now type of thing. But it certainly does speak to the guy, having a lot of Ryan Day's trust. And certainly they believe he can handle it as a recruiter, because in the last year, Matt Barnes, when he was in that role these last 2 seasons as a special teams coordinator and a defensive back assistant, Matt Barnes was extremely important on the recruiting front for Ohio State, but he didn't always get the attention. And you did ask earlier, but I haven't heard a lot of Parker Fleming's name to this point. Not like you do some of the other assistant coaches, like I've mentioned before. Kennedy Cook is one who constantly is brought up by offensive line recruits. But again, you just have to sort of wait and see, because this is Ryan Day's decision and it's his program.
I think what's interesting to me, and it struck me that this has now happened 2 years in a row. If there was another offensive opening at this time next year, I think it would be 3 years in a row, because Keenan Bailey is waiting in the wings. And so Ohio State has found these people, and you mentioned Kennedy Cook. I mean, they've got guys that they want in the program permanently. And some of this non-million-dollar hires is that there may be more money for quality control analysts, assistant to the assistants positions, those types of things, where that builds it up. And it does. That's sort of where, you can see Alabama stockpiling it and having a room full of 30, 40 coaches, that get captured on TV. I don't think Ohio State has any intention to do that, but they've identified a bunch of young talent, and that developed here thing doesn't seem to just be applying to the players. I don't think that they want Keenan Bailey to ever leave the program as long as Ryan Day is around. So we might be having the same conversation a year from now.
And the other thing that Alabama's done, and they've been able to manage this, is that all these coaches come in with huge buyouts from other places. So you don't have to pay them a lot of money. They're coming to work basically to rehabilitate themselves as potential coaching hires down the road. And it is a different approach. It certainly, again, when you're talking to Buckeyes fans out there, they're going to see it and be like, okay, how does Parker Fleming relate to Bill O'Brien? And it doesn't, and it's not meant to. And I think that's the thing that maybe gets lost here.
Anything else, Spencer? You good?
No, I just think that I'm gonna trust what Ryan Day's doing right now. I think he's got something. I think he's got this program moving in the right direction. I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt, even through 2 years, that he knows what he's doing. I think he's only missed on one hire, and that maybe if you categorize Mike Yurcich as a miss on a hire, but other than that, he's done a good job of putting together his staff, and I think he'll probably do a good job with this Parker Fleming hire.
And Yurcich's 1 year, he had a Heisman finalist, and again, we're talking about Ohio State. The expectations are so grandiose, and everything is so under the microscope and under so much scrutiny that we lose track of what's real compared to, I think, the majority of college football, because Mike Yurcich was overseeing a record-breaking offense with two Heisman Trophy finalists on offense and a playoff berth. So, I mean, it's like, I think we've just jumped the shark.
Usually it's much more clear to me when we need to end rapid reaction and an actual jumping of the shark. This was pretty tame by our standards here at Lettermen Row. Parker Fleming has completed the Ohio State coaching staff, breaking that down on National Signing Day. A lot more coverage coming, of course, from Birm on this day that's quieter than normal, but we'll still have a lot to talk about for Ohio State as they close up this one signing class, get ready for the next one, and complete this coaching staff. For Birm and Spencer Holbrook, I'm Austin Ward. This has been Rapid Reaction, brought to you by Byers Auto. Stay with us for full coverage of the Buckeyes at LettermenRow.com.